Developed by From Software and published by Activision and released in 2019 for the Sony PlayStation 4, personal computer and Xbox One was that of Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. The game was highly praised by critics as well as gamers for authentic depictions of Japanese culture from the period of the game that was set into being that of the Sengoku period. An interesting theory had it that relating to the experience of the game, some players mentioned that it was slightly more difficult, even frustrating for casual gamers, in the fact that the difficulty was so apparent during gameplay that the dynamics of the game couldn't be truly understood or even performed correctly by some players in order to literally enjoy or truly experience the game. Speculation further had it that due to the mechanics of the game in terms of parrying, blocking, dodging or evading, with relying on these skills in terms of swordsmanship as well as skill in when to use these abilities, with items even properly leveling up, all combined with patience if done incorrectly, it was theoretically very hard or even impossible to play the game. Mentioned throughout the game was that of Lady Tomoe, the swordswoman whom was the mentor to Genichiro Ashina. Through events in the game, Genichiro, from his own opinions, opted to try and save Ashina from threats, and perhaps due to his own ruthlessness and ambitions, mentioned by his grandfather Ishin Ashina, used what were considered heretical and forbidden martial art techniques during the fight with the wolf. These forms of martial arts is what Genichiro believed would help him to protect as well as control the Ashina domain. This style of combat used lightning through his sword as well as the arrow equipped onto his bow. This exact method or style of combat was depicted as the way of Tomoe, as she was the one who theoretically devised these methods of warfare. Also mentioned in the game as a technique of the gods, lightning was considered too powerful as well as too dangerous to be used by mortals, and those who used lightning in combat were viewed as men or women whom had forsaken their humanity for their own desires or ambitions. The theory was mentioned in conversation from Emmett and Ishin on their opinions of Genichiro after hearing and witnessing what he had done during the fight against Sekiro. A theory goes that due to some plot gaps within the backstory of Sekiro between Lord Takeru and Tomoe, that some assumed that there would have been a sort of downloadable content for the game and the whole backstory or further details of the both of them would have been explored, explained, and witnessed. Multiple in-game conversations of Tomoe and Lord Takeru were mentioned by multiple characters as well as in-game items, theorized the concept of the pair and what they had done during their failed attempt to sever the dragon's heritage. Sources had the Black Scroll depicted information about the Black Mortal Blade, which was different from the Red Mortal Blade that was obtained by the wolf during the game's playthrough. This Black Mortal Blade was supposed to have the power to open a gate to the underworld. The premise would have been that Tomoe and Takeru both died through circumstances mentioned through in-game dialogue, and that Sekiro would have theoretically have gone to the underworld to possibly acquire the Black Mortal Blade, and even theoretically fight Tomoe. This theory made sense, as through the normal progression of the game, had it that Sekiro went into the Divine Realm and even engaging in a fight against the Divine Dragon, with mystical places such as the Fountainhead Palace. But the concept with relation to Tomoe would have had it that Sekiro could have ventured into the underworld, which would have been the sort of expansion of the lore as well as the depictions of the world of Ashina, as well as From Software's interpretation of the Japanese netherworld, with an eventual confrontation against Tomoe as the final boss of proposed downloadable content. However, this never occurred, as once Sekiro Shadows Die Twice was released, there were never any further expansions or further content with relation to Tomoe. Discussions had it that due to the premise polarized gamers, and these controversies might have influenced decisions to have the game with no further clarification of Tomoe or Lord Takeru, and possibly plans to further the game's story were abandoned. Sometimes a character can be forgotten because they were mentioned or depicted many times throughout a game's story, but the dynamics of the game were considered too difficult, and these mentionings never amounted to anything.